Live. We're live.
Hello.
Oh, should I go?
Yeah, I can also start. So, yeah, hello everybody. So basically we're doing this collaboration today between the Astrology Club and Jaymie. She's really kindly offered to collaborate with the Astrology Club and to give this advice session about Aries season. And I'm very excited about it. And if you have like questions about it, you can always put questions in the chat and they'll be answered later. And then when Jaymie leaves, I will be here for people that want chit chat if anyone just joined later on as well. Yeah, have I forgotten anything?
No, I don't think so. Hi, everyone. I'm Jaymie from J-me Scorpio AF. And for Aries season, I wanted to just talk a little bit about Aries. For those of you guys who are jumping on, this is going to be recorded, so anybody can watch this. And so I want to first tell you guys just a little bit about who I am, my background quickly. And for anyone who's not familiar with astrology, I'm just going to quickly go over what exactly your birth chart is. And this is because I want to make this information as accessible for everyone, whether you're starting off or you're a more seasoned astrologer. At the end, I'm going to be providing everyone with details on how you can use the Aries energy for wherever Aries is in your chart. Because I believe that with every astrology insight that you receive, if you don't get information on how you can use this information, I feel like it's not as helpful. So definitely stay till the end so that I can give you that information. So just really quickly, my background is in ancient and in modern astrology. Because we live in a modern world, I believe that modern astrology is relevant and important for modern times. With that said, there's a lot about modern astrology where some of the math and the science is kind of not as emphasized. And the thing is that we live in a modern world, some of the information in modern astrology has been distorted and convoluted over time. And this is because imagine if, you know, I whispered something to Raisa and then Raisa whispered it to someone else and then to someone else. By the second, third, fourth person, the story is going to change a little bit. So I feel like going to the origin and the source of why certain concepts are what they are is so important, because some of the concepts in modern astrology, they exist, they don't actually apply to modern times because they might be outdated. And the thing is that the ancient astrologers, they were mathematicians and scientists. So there's a lot of timing techniques and predictions with ancient astrology where it's a lot more precise. So I really love blending both of them. I do have a diverse background because astrology is a mixture of art, science, math, philosophy, psychology, spirituality, everything blended together. And it's meant to help us understand the uniqueness of every individual. And so the more knowledgeable I am, the more I'm able to assist my clients. So I have gotten especially more extensive training in astrocartography, which is the astrology of location and place, vocational astrology, horary, medical astrology, and karmic astrology, as well as classical and modern astrology. So that's just a little bit about how I kind of do astrology, and I blend a lot of different things from medicine, martial arts, my perspective as a woman of color, societal concepts and stuff, and these are psychology, child development, and some of these things are going to be weaved into the discussion we're talking about with Aries. And but before we get started, just for anyone who's watching this who's not familiar with what your birth chart is, it's a snapshot of what's in the sky at the exact time of your birth. So this snapshot, think of it like a wheel or a circle, and it's divided up into 12 sections. Think of each of these sections as pie slices. And in each pie slice, there's a house number and a zodiac sign. So the house number represents a specific area of your life, while the zodiac sign represents the personality, themes, and patterns that show up in that area of your life. That's why in certain areas of your life, you might be really assertive, and other areas you're a little uncertain and stuff. That has to do with the zodiac placements, as well as the planets that are also scattered. And the planets have the ability to overpower and potentially change the energy depending on the different combinations. So say that in your first house, for example, the zodiac sign here is determined by the exact time that you're born. So this is when you're first coming into the world, which is why it represents new beginnings. So whenever you're trying to start something new, this is a great area of your chart to look at. It reveals the best way for you to navigate your life, for example. And because the second house sits right below your first house, there are things that support you and your physical body, which is your first house essentially. So these are like resources, as such in modern astrology, there's emphasis on money, but it's also about your weight, your food, your family, your beliefs, things of that nature. And so every house represents a specific area. And so then there's different levels of strengths with each houses as well. And so we'll talk about that briefly and how it affects where you have Aries in your chart. So just wanted to give you kind of a quick overview on that. And then from there, I can just get into Aries unless you have any questions or anything, Raisa.
I was just gonna ask you if, like, you want me to, like, ask you any further questions during it, or if it's better that you just go on and yeah, and if people do have like questions about their chart whilst we're on the call as well, what they can do is they can also message me on the Astrology Club, like if they're a bit stuck with their chart, like what house Aries is for them, I can answer it for them.
Yeah, that'd be great. I do kind of like when I'm talking to just kind of like riff, but I'll check in every so often just so that if anybody has any questions, we can answer. But I don't want you to feel like you have to ask me questions or anything like that. And yes, thank you for just like helping everyone else out with any questions they may have. And then in between as I'm talking, I'll definitely be able to answer any questions you might have.
Would you like me to turn my camera off as well?
It's actually, yeah, why don't we do that?
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much again as well, just for doing this. So I'm really excited to see what comes out of it.
Of course, absolutely. So we're going to be talking about Aries because it's Aries season. And it's the first zodiac sign, which is why it's associated to the first house, because it's an initiating cardinal sign because it starts off a new season. So any sign that starts off a new season is known as a cardinal sign and has like this beginning, starting sort of an energy that Aries possesses. And I've titled this as Aries are the ringleader because they're leaders, they're the most courageous and daring. So these are the things that I think about when I think of like a ringleader. You know, like it's a really dangerous job at the circus where you're, you know, like getting animals to go through the hoop, things like that. And so there's still a lot of this like amazing energy. And there's something called the natural zodiac wheel where the zodiac signs belong to specific houses. And so depending on what time you were born, you're not necessarily going to have Aries in your first house, but the qualities of Aries is going to be found in the first house. And whatever house you have Aries in, this is the area of your life where really being brave, bold, courageous, being self-oriented, starting something new, doing something that other people haven't done, and even being a bit impulsive, this is what you're meant to do. Like I describe this as the fuck around to find out energy, because it's not like, I'm not saying that it's like an excuse to be impulsive and reckless to a detriment where you're harming yourself or other people, but this is an area of your life where you're not really here to think things through. It's not an air sign, it's not Mercury or Virgo and stuff like that. Aries is the most physically active sign. And so you really want to use this energy because Aries is represented by a ram, which have these horns that are designed for blunt force trauma. So the interesting thing is where people have Aries, people might experience more judgment, They might experience people, particularly if they're scared and people are like, why are you doing this? Why are you being so reckless? Why are you being so emotional and stuff? And the thing is, I want you to give yourself some grace and patience and kindness and just be more daring and bold in this area of your chart, because where you have Aries, it's not so much, if you're not here to play it safe, because when you're just going out and you're doing things, there are lessons and experiences and things that change you just from having that visceral experience. And it's really where you're here to explore different things. And it's not really about maintaining and finishing stuff. So sometimes people can get a little frustrated because Aries are quick to start something and then not maintain it and finish it. But that's not what you're here to do. And that isn't to say that where you have things where you're not like doing stuff that you shouldn't make like consider, you should obviously consider other people, but you can look to the part of your chart where you have the fixed signs in order to maintain, and then the mutable signs where you could finish off that energy rather than just using the Aries energy. Aries is a leader that leads by example. So you are here to do both things that motivate and inspire people to show up in a way that's designed to work for them. So you can also delegate tasks so that the things you don't want to do, that you don't want to maintain and finish, you don't have to do it. There are ways that you can collaborate with other people. Aries is really competitive. It's a really physically active sign and stuff. They represent entrepreneurs and startups, which is something that I do want to mention, but I have some J-me Scorpio AF insights that I really want to share with you guys. And these are concepts that actually go against what most people talk about in astrology. And so I actually challenge some of the concepts and norms about Aries, and I relate it to child development, human development, societal concepts, conditioning, and perceptions, and I blend in some science into it as well. So Aries are often seen as the sign that's not emotional because it's a fire sign. Fire signs are described as not being emotional, and the water signs are known as being emotional, and they are. But the thing is that the next sign always dissolves the energy of the previous sign and the previous house. So the sign before Aries is Pisces, and Pisces is it's a really emotional sign. It's really passive in nature, whereas Aries is really assertive, can be dominant, potentially forceful and stuff. So there's this idea that water signs are emotional, so Aries aren't. And I disagree with that for a number of reasons. Aries is associated with anger, and we forget that anger is an emotion. And so I feel like this is more of a failure in just the societal concepts of what we attribute to be feelings, because anger is an emotion. We find it on the feeling wheel map. So it's very much a part of emotions, and yet because as a society we don't acknowledge it as an emotion, it gets dismissed. And I feel like that's such a disservice to astrology, to Aries, and I think it also contributes to problems as well, because we live in a world that attributes anger to boys and men, and we see it as when they're angry, we dismiss it as a personality trait. And we're like, oh, that's just boys being boys, men being men and stuff. And we don't give it the attention that it actually deserves. In Ayurvedic medicine, anger and sadness are antidotes to each other. So when people are experiencing anger, underneath it is sadness. And people who are experiencing sadness, there's anger underneath it. And so when we just assume that, if we just normalize that anger is just an Aries trait or just a male trait in general, I think that there's a lot of problems. And I think that that comes honestly from this idea that we associate emotions with women and girls and not other people because of our menstrual cycle. But that also doesn't make sense, because women are known to be the emotional ones when we're on our period, which one is like not most of the time, hopefully. And it's when our testosterone levels are highest. So it's actually when we have most of the male hormones. And so there's already sort of this flawed thinking that I just think doesn't make sense. And I think that it's such a disservice to assume and see it as Aries aren't emotional and we just ignore the part about the anger. And what's interesting is that Aries rules newborns because, as I've mentioned, Aries is traditionally home to the first house when we first come into the world, where we're newborns. And newborns are like exposed raw nerves, right? And so the idea that Aries aren't emotional just doesn't make sense. And I think that it causes a lot of harm. And in the next video on Taurus, I'll talk more about how you can leverage the energy of anger and Aries to heal the area of your life that is related to Taurus, because everything is interconnected. But essentially, for the purposes of this call, Aries and anger is actually showing us what we're actually upset about and what needs aren't being met. And so there is a sacredness to anger that I think has to be looked at, but oftentimes emotions, anger is seen in this very binary, masculine, divisive way of it's bad. But there is a sacredness to anger that I think is so important. And personally, I find anger to be it's personally my favorite energy to transmute. So it's something that I do encourage you to kind of take a look at, where you have Aries in your chart, where are you getting angry, and especially during Aries season, if things are coming up, really take a look at that, because that's something to very much explore, which I find is so absolutely important. And the thing is that with every sign, there's positive manifestations and then there's the challenging manifestations. So how you relate to the energy of Aries and how that expresses itself tells you sort of the relationship and the level of consciousness that you're engaging in with Aries. So for example, Aries at its best, they're leaders, they're self-oriented, and they're the sign that rules entrepreneurs. Because they're so young, because they're the first zodiac signs, they haven't been socially conditioned yet. So where you have Aries in your chart, this is the area where you do want to be bold. You do want to experiment and try new things and see how it hits for you. Because this is an area where it's not about getting it right. It's about having those experiences and starting new things. And so this is one of the best ways to use this energy. Now, on the other hand, if you are experiencing challenges that are related to Aries, like, for example, you're prone to accidents, or especially like in your head, or like traumas, cuts, bruises, and stuff like that. If you have anger outbursts, or you're experiencing impulsivity in a way that's detrimental, if you're being if you are experiencing headaches, because Aries is a very inflammatory sign. If there's sort of that like redness going on in your face, you're frustrated, there's a lot of heat in you, instead of being self-oriented, maybe you or someone you know is being selfish, then these are indicators that the energy of Aries isn't being used in the most productive way. But there are ways that you can redirect that energy. Generally, Aries that aren't exercising, that aren't being that are feeling restless, that have anger, they need to reinvent themselves. They need to start something new because of the energy of Aries. And so these are going to be things that are going to help you. But the other thing is that you can take a look at Libra, because the thing is that whenever you're experiencing any challenge, it doesn't have to be an Aries situation, but whatever your issues are that you're dealing with, if you are like the opposite sign has the opposite energy, so you can balance that out. So if you're struggling with being selfish, if you or any of the things that I mentioned, using the energy of Libra can balance it out, because it's kind of like a seesaw, right? And so Aries is about trying new things, and it's about experiencing things from this self-oriented perspective. But if that's not working to your benefit, using the energy of Libra can be really beneficial. And this is because Libra is thinking about you and another person. It's about identifying that mutual interest and that mutual benefit. So Raisa, she's a Libra rising, and she's such a good example. You're welcome to get back on camera, by the way. But she's a really good example of being a Libra where, you know, like she's very good. She's naturally intuitively considering the other person, but she doesn't lose herself in the process, or at least the way, you know, I've had an interaction with you. I hope that's how you normally live your life. And so it's one of those things where you can really balance that energy out. And so that's one of the things that I definitely recommend. And I have some tips as far as like what you can do right now with Mercury and Venus retrograding in Aries, but it can also be anytime Mercury and Venus is retrograding in Aries, or if you have these issues and these themes and you have significant Aries, this is an area of your life where you can sort of take advantage of this energy. Because I mentioned already that you can use the energy of Libra, right, to balance things out. And we have the ruler of Libra, Venus, in Aries. So right now, it's going to be a little bit easier for you to be able to see things from considering the other person and stuff. You know, you want to be a leader, you want to inspire people. But one of the things that you can take a look at is when you're at your best, you're motivated, you feel good, you're inspiring others and stuff, you're reinventing yourself, but you're also not upsetting other people in the process. If you're getting frustrated because other people are expressing frustration, that kind of tells you balancing that Libra energy is going to be really beneficial. And then we have the energy of Mercury, which is about thinking about these things, you know, communication, things of that nature. But Aries is a physically active sign, and it's not a sign that is really about sitting down and journaling, you know, and I'm a really restless person. And one of the things that I really don't like is every time there's a Mercury retrograde, people are like, journal. Like, what about for some of us who don't want to? What if we have carpal tunnel? What if we don't, you know, and I get like really difficult. And I just kind of feel like it's like really like, I don't know, I call it basic bitch energy, but maybe I'm just like jealous that I'm not that disciplined. I don't know. But Aries is a physically active sign. So what I recommend is work out, like whether you're doing squats, you're walking, you're doing some sort of physical activity. I personally love swimming. And think about the other person. And because Aries is really about, it's about advocating for people as well, or it very much can be. One of the things is, if it resonates with you, to do like improv and consider being the other person who's upset with you, get into their shoes and get mad. So hypothetically, say, I don't know, you and Marisa, we got into it, right? And you called me out on something and I'm throwing a fit, I don't know, right? I hope we better not be manifesting this, but you know, it would be me thinking, like seeing it from your perspective and being like, well, you know, like this really pissed me off, or I didn't really like this, and da 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 da. Think about it from the perspective of the other person advocating and stuff. And I really encourage you to do this when you're in movement, not only because you're in the energy of Aries, but because we have more connections between our left and right brain hemisphere, and we make more connections when we're in movement. So this is going to be easier to be able to see things, and that very much channels the energy of Gemini, because it's about making connections, which rules Mercury and stuff. So it's also that like walking, that movement and stuff like that, where you're able, and it also rules Virgo, which Mercury rules Virgo, which is about solving problems, essentially, or how you deal with conflict. So this is a good way to really get into that energy. And I think just talking it out is going to be more effective than journaling it out, because that seems like more of a passive energy. But you can also record yourself if you want. And there's so many apps and sites now where you can just like drop the recording and it'll do the transcriptions for you. So that's also a really great way to take advantage of this energy. And you can really kind of, this is a great time to really reflect on, what is it that I'm doing? How is it affecting another person? This doesn't necessarily have to be like, right now I'm giving an example of like, if you're struggling with the energy of Aries, if you're not experiencing that, still just in general, Aries is an entrepreneur. Where can you show up in your leadership? How can you, what can you do to become more physically active? you can still kind of use these sorts of energy and think about these things, specifically where Aries is in your chart, for example. So like Raisa, you have Aries in your 7th house, which is technically anyone that isn't you, even though it's often related to like spouses and long-term partners, but they're also shadow qualities that you're meant to integrate with. It's about your clients, your business collaborators, you know, and something that I really appreciate is that you really do give your collaborators space to really be independent, to kind of do things their own way, and you share that space. And I think that that's such a beautiful way to use that energy, you know. But like, say you have like a lot of collaborators that are like getting mad or getting furious at you, or other people are just getting angry at you, or whatever the case may be, right? This is a time to reflect and be like, well, why is everyone mad at me? You know, is it because you should speak up for yourself? Is the universe saying like, hey, match that energy, be a mirror to them? Or is it telling you like, oh, do I need to disengage? Am I looking at that behavior and being like, oh, I have those qualities, I have to change that about myself? Or maybe you're seeing people get frustrated, but in a healthy way, and you're like, oh, maybe this is something to look at. So weird TMI, but I rarely experience constipation, and I don't understand how people in life get to experience like live a normal life. Like, I was spiraling when I had to experience it, and I was talking to one of my friends about it, and I was like, I'm just so cranky and upset, and I just don't understand, and and I'm just like so mad. And the whole time I'm thinking like, oh my God, I'm so annoying. I need to fix this before she cuts me out of her life. And instead, she was just like, you know, you really inspired me to take some changes and actions in my life, because this is how I feel all the time, and I just normalized it, but that's not okay. You know, so it's like sometimes you see how people behave, and it may be a way to be like, oh, like I should change something, or I should embody more of it, you know. And we can't always control how people show up. If someone is getting angry, or lots of people are getting angry, it doesn't mean that you should get angry in that way, but it's maybe telling you there's something to look at. And this is why I brought up the Ayurvedic concept, is that it might not actually be anger. Maybe it's sadness that you have to look at. You know, there's different things. And particularly for you, the area of your life where that energy shows up, like when you're feeling unmotivated, looking at where Aries is in your chart is a great way to get that start. So for you, it's looking to someone else. If you're like, hey, I want to do this thing, do you want to do it with me? And, you know, picking collaborators who are entrepreneurs, Aries, who are independent minded. These are people that you do really well with. My sister also has your placement, and her husband, he has Mars in Aries, and Mars is already the ruler of Aries. So he has that Aries quality in Cancer, which is also his sun sign. And he's very athletic. You know, so there's different ways where that energy can show up. The 7th house is things that are far away from you. So it also is one of the lesser known meanings, is that it rules traveling. So, you know, if you want to become, I mean, you have to look at your whole chart, but for some people who have Aries in their 7th house, maybe if you're an entrepreneur, traveling can be the thing that helps to inspire you. This is where your collaborators can be. You know, there's different ways that you can essentially take a look at your chart. But also, like, one of the things that I really recommend people is to get familiar with what house a sign is in. Or if you're having problems or challenges or issues, or if there's something that you want to manifest in your life, look at the sign that rules those things, look at what house it's in, and that's going to tell you where you can manifest that energy in your life. And so that's why I mentioned, like, you know, like if you were, for example, interested in becoming more of an entrepreneur, if you have an opportunity to travel, you know, or to travel to a place with a bunch of startups and entrepreneurs, this can be a great thing for you as a way to sort of manifest that energy. the houses are also basically like their locations and their people, essentially. So you can look at that area to see kind of like where you can get that energy. And I could go in and like I can, and I'll definitely go into the specific houses. But there's also like, there's some things I wanted to mention about like authority figures. If you have issues with that, right now with the theme of Mercury and Venus here, talking about like relationships and ways that we can take advantage of sort of like this independent energy of Aries. But I was wondering, do you have any questions, Raisa?
I don't have any questions, but I didn't notice anyone, for example, you said it could be any emotion that people could be feeling towards me. And I wouldn't say from other people there's been like anger or something that I've noticed. So when you don't notice those things, could it be that people are thinking those things internally and they haven't showed you those emotions?
I would say no with Aries, just because Aries is not one to hold back. Like Aries will tell you how it is. So I was kind of like giving the examples of like how to handle things if you're having issues with Aries. I don't, and like I was trying to come up with examples, and in my mind I was like, Raisa isn't really the best example because I feel like she has a really good balance Libra and Aries and stuff. But I think that that's a lot of that has to do with the way that you use your energy as that like collaborator, one-on-one, considering yourself and other people. And the thing is that and this is the case with any of the signs, is that when there are problems that show up, it's usually because the energy has to express itself, positive or otherwise. And so if it's not being expressed negatively, it's probably because there's not anger like towards you. You know, and I do feel like you are already kind of activating this energy as it is. Like, I know you're like, you know, I've spoken to you and you're doing so many different things, like a gazillion different collaborators, and just with like the people and their personalities that you've shared about them and me knowing some of them and stuff, like we do have these Aries qualities. We're entrepreneurs. We like to start different things, reinvent things and stuff. So, and it's in your energy of collaboration. I don't think that it's that people are hiding it. I think it's really funny because your question kind of like, it reveals your desire to want to grow. So you're like, do you think it's hidden? Is there a way for me to like identify it? And it's like, no, I don't think there's actually anything necessarily to work on. You're like preemptively trying to be like, I'm ready to work on myself. Where are they? And it's like, you don't need to. I think you're good. So I just thought that was really funny. But yeah, and God, there's like, I'm like really happy. I'm a lot better on time than I expected. Oh, I guess there's 20 minutes. Yeah, but let's see. I think some of the themes that I think is like really important, and this isn't even necessarily like because Venus is in Aries. Like I previously mentioned, the next sign in the next house is always the resource of the previous sign in the previous house. So the next sign after Aries is Taurus. So Taurus things support Aries. So even though Aries are quick to start things and initiate and be impulsive and stuff, and that's great because that's how things get revolutionized, but it's not a sustainable way to live. If you're being impulsive and you ram through things, then you're only going to get so far, right? Especially as we get older, because Aries is a youthful sign, eventually we're going to burn out. So leveraging the energy of Taurus is going to be really beneficial. But before I get into that, don't take what I said about that to encourage you to mean to hold back your Aries, because Aries is one of the most regenerative signs. So even though people like the reality of the matter is, if you're being impulsive, if you're not thinking things through, then you're likely to make more mistakes, right? But that's okay. Aries aren't here to be correct. They're here to have experiences, to move quickly, to inspire others. Do it in a way that's responsible, that's keeping you and others safe, of course. But other than that, be willing to put yourself out there. Like I have friends who have I have quite a number of friends who and clients who have a Venus in Aries. So they tend to be very impulsive in romance and love and stuff like that. Whereas for me, Saturn rules my entire romance, dating, sex life. So I'm like, I have a really long burn. And so I can immediately look at someone and just be like, ooh, and calculate all the way that that's going to go downhill, why it's not going to work, where the incompatibility are. And I can think of a million different things like super fast, right? But the thing is, someone who has Venus in Aries, they're not here to not make those, like, get into those relationships. They're here to experience those things. And the thing is, you do experience things differently when you live it versus living in your brain and being like, that's not a good idea, you know? And so this is really to say, give yourself permission. And one of the biggest things that I've learned, and this is why I love astrology so much, because it allows this, is with anything, we have to be really mindful and selective about who's giving us the advice to make sure and understand, is this advice correct for me? So with Aries, you do want to experience a certain level of impulsivity and putting yourself out there, things of that nature. And also, Taurus is there to support you. Taurus is ruled by Venus. It's about the things that you value and things of that nature. And so whenever the sun is in Aries, whenever the Mercury, Venus is in Aries, or any of the planets, I think that this is a great time to really consider those Aries things and like find ways to be like, well, what does this look like? What's going to help me? And the thing is, Aries is about independence, right? It's about being assertive, putting yourself out there. Taurus is about the things that you value. So one of the things that I really encourage you to consider, what is it that you value? Are you just impulsively doing things just to do it? Do they actually meet your values? Is it something that's really important to you? I think that this is especially important for entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurs are ruled by Aries, and I feel like we're just quick to just throw things out there and see how it hits and stuff. And there's something to that, yes, but also reflect and be like, what matters to you? What's important to you? Are the things that you're doing, do they actually meet those needs? Are they matching it? Because if not, it's time to let it go. The thing is that Aries rules beginnings and initiating and stuff, because it is the sign that starts off a new season, spring season, and that's when things bloom and grow, yes. But the thing is, Aries is also ruled by Mars, and Mars, being an independent planet, was the first one to say, I'm going to move away from the sun. I'm going to do my own thing, because all of the planets orbit around the sun, and the sun, the rest of the planets can only be so far away from the planet, which is why the planet's retrograde. But the thing is, Mars wanted to separate. So for that reason, Aries is also about endings and separating. And because Aries isn't about maintaining and finishing things, what's important isn't just to like keep it going, because Aries is interesting in that even though it's an initiating sign and it's not meant to maintain and finish things, it's such an energized sign. It can keep going. It can keep pushing. It doesn't mean you should, though. So really think about, do I need to sever ties? Do I need to end this? Because the next sign, Taurus, is about maintaining things, and the opposite sign has that opposite meaning, the 8th house, which is about like, I mean, it is a fixed sign, but it's about reversals. It's about ending things. So if you're doing stuff and you're maintaining it, because the energy of Taurus, you're just kind of maintaining things, even though it's not necessarily good for you, you can look at the 8th house, or the sign that's 8 houses away from Aries, use that energy to create a reversal and change things. I don't want to confuse you guys too much. I hope that that makes sense. But this is something that I think is really important. And one of the things that I find really interesting and troubling in business coaching and programs and stuff, and I would say even in vocational astrology, is that I feel like Aries are given advice that's honestly not sustainable to the energy of who they are. Now, this isn't to say, because I'm emphasizing that you're not here to maintain and finish things, that you shouldn't follow through. You also have the stamina to follow through anyways. So, you know, like a lot of Aries people are very consistent for that reason. But what bothers me is when I've heard the business advice of like, you have to finish what you start, for entrepreneurs. That can be so detrimental. And I would say, especially most entrepreneurs, we usually get it wrong as far as what we want to do in life. And I believe it's because the way our nervous system and our brain works, it says everything we've done so far has kept us alive and it's kept us safe. So when we want to experience something that we've never done before, our nervous system is scared. So we're only going to stretch so far, you know? So a lot of times we're not even aware of what it is that we truly want to do because our subconscious and unconscious mind is protecting us from that information. So usually Aries are usually entrepreneurs when they first start off creating a business. That's not the thing that you should do. That's the safe thing that your body and your nervous system and your mind told you to do. So it's okay. And I encourage you to let things go that don't resonate with you. And I think that one of the things that's not emphasized are what matters to you. The minute entrepreneurs start something, what tends to kick up is people are like, well, I don't want to do that. And sometimes it's fear, it's self-sabotage, yes. And sometimes it's because it's your core values of Taurus kicking up and people are given the bad advice of well, if you want to succeed, you need to keep pushing through it. And it's that's not necessarily going to be sustainable. So I think that with Aries and entrepreneurs, or where you have Aries in your chart, being willing to end things that separate is really important. Really ask yourself, is this inspiring you? Is this motivating you? Is it motivating other people? Is it giving you energy? Is it causing you anger? How would you feel if you ended things? Because sometimes ending it is actually the best thing. And I remember this business astrologer saying something that I personally didn't resonate with. And they gave the example of saying, it sounded good and stuff, but it took, I think, it used an approach that I didn't resonate with. It wasn't very community building. And it was this advice of this analogy of if you're trying to build a business or a house and you just start laying on the bricks and then you don't finish, and then you start building another house and you start adding up bricks, and now you have 5 different houses and you started layering the bricks, but you didn't finish with that first house. You're never gonna finish. So they're you have to finish building the house. That sounds like really good advice in theory, but it's not sustainable. And the thing is, sometimes a lot of Aries, especially if you're a Sag rising, you have Aries in your 5th house of your own business, they do phenomenally well with startups. I cannot emphasize this enough. So, and starting is the hardest thing. So trying to finish can actually be so detrimental. And I feel especially now with the younger generation, with the Gen Zs and people building apps and selling apps and starting concepts and stuff, I think that it's so important for people to be willing to start things and then letting it go when it doesn't resonate with you. This isn't the same as if you're avoiding doing the work because of self-sabotage, but I think that there's so many people who are just being misled because there's this idea of you need to finish what you start. And so another thing that you can take a look at is calculate how many planets you have in the cardinal signs, which are the signs that start off the new season. So these are Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. If you have most of your planets here, then honestly, or you have lots of planets in your 5th house, or you're in Aries, or a Sag rising, like I mentioned, then these are things where it's actually best for you to start things and then delegate the maintaining and finishing to other people. Because when I first heard that advice about the brick, it made sense in theory, but the truth is I didn't understand, why are you building a brick house by yourself? Success is greater when you have a community. And when you have a community, honestly, the things that you absolutely hate to do with a visceral vengeance, there is someone who loves doing that and is deeply wishing and hoping that they can do it. So this is to say, really work with what works best for you. And that's gonna have so much value for you. So those are just some thoughts that I wanted to mention. And then the other thing is that Aries is also about authority figures. And if you tend to have issues with authority figures, this could also be an invitation essentially to start your own business, to be your own boss. I see this happening a lot as a Cancer rising because I'm a Cancer rising and I have Aries in my 10th house, and I've had some extremely problematic bosses, but that's because it was the universe's way of getting me into this mood of like, I don't want to deal with this shit. I'm going to be my own boss. So sometimes these are the things that can show up too. They do show up in a lot of different ways. But I mean, there's so many different ways that this can show up. I'm just giving the examples that are more social and physical in nature, because Aries, being a fire sign, is social and it's physical in nature. But I don't know if you have any questions, Raisa. I know that Miriam had some questions, right?
Yeah, and it was actually she's also a Cancer rising, we found out.
Nice. Let me see what it says here. Sun, Aries, okay. Moon in Pisces, Cancer rising, so Aries, your 10th house, 11th house, Pisces. How would you? Okay, so this person is a Cancer rising, has their sun in the 10th house of Aries and their moon in 9th house Pisces. So I'm using whole house right now. She does have Aries in her 11th house in Placidus, so I'll talk about that briefly as well. But this person is asking, how would you say Aries should approach handling many interests and projects at once? A lot of energy means a lot of ambitious projects, but maybe not to maintain it over time. I hope that makes sense. Have a wonderful day ahead. Oh, thank you. Okay, so I don't know if Miriam was around for the part where I did mention some of this stuff, but this is basically to say that having Aries in your 10th house, it's an angular house. So one of the things that I do want to mention is that, you know how I was mentioning the natural zodiac wheel? This is where zodiac signs traditionally belong to specific houses. The angular houses are where the cardinal signs are, and these are the signs that start off the new season. And so they have the most power and energy. So when you have Aries in an angular house with an angular house in the 10th house, this is where Aries has a lot of energy. And the sun is also exalted here. This is really great. The thing is that her moon is in Pisces. And so your sun is how you express yourself. It's your creative brilliance, your intelligence. So even though Mercury is often associated with intelligence, Mercury is more of a mental calculator. What makes you unique with your brilliant insight, that's more Aries. And particularly being, I mean, that's more the sun. And with that creative, brilliant energy being in Aries, this is very much about starting new and innovative things. And that's how like, this is like output energy. Whereas like your moon and what you need, Pisces, it's more sensitized. So I would say like, especially since your sun is in a public house and your moon is in Pisces, which is private, even though it is in the 9th house, which is it's a social house, this is more like at home. You want to make sure that you have some privacy, some personal space, meditation area, maybe some like water themes and stuff. Definitely give yourself permission to isolate in order to recharge, especially as a Cancer rising. And so with this question, I would actually start by answering it, focusing more with your Cancer rising sign, because your rising sign tells you the best way for you to navigate your life. And in a world that says just to feel the fear and just do it anyways, Cancer is actually about comfort, especially with your moon in Pisces as well, because your moon, your physical body, your feelings, your home, what makes you feel at home, your sense of like emotional foundation is in the most vulnerable sign. And Cancer is ruled by a crab that is in this shell and stuff. The best way for you to navigate this is start when you feel inspired. But there's a little bit of caveat, and as you're rewatching this, I have a feeling you're gonna know what I mean, especially as an entrepreneur with your sun in Aries. is that Cancer is a cardinal sign because it starts off the summer season, but it's a water sign. So there's sort of like this like duality going on, because water signs are supposed to be leisurely and passive, and yet Cancer wants to start right away. So Cancers are supposed to practice patience and stuff. So something that I've learned is that when you feel motivated to get started, learn the difference between, do you want to get started because you have this compulsion to, because it's your cardinal energy showing up? And if that's the case, you want to wait for the next wave. And that next wave, you should feel comfortable, you should feel safe, you should feel inspired. Use your intuitive guidance and that intuitive sense of flow and timing. And one thing that I always tell all of my Cancer clients is that take an indirect approach, because Cancers are represented by crabs, and crabs walk sideways. I can't tell you how many times I've tried to get straight to the point and it just blows up in my face, and I use the most inefficient route, and I'm just like, that is so annoying. And then I learned astrology and I'm like, oh, that makes sense. But that's when you're initiating something, because, and I want you to understand the energy and the difference between that and when you're in your fits. This, when I say like start when you feel ready, be inefficient and indirect by doing things sideways instead of doing things directly. Like, you want to feel it in your body, because your rising sign is your physical body. So it should feel right. You might have to do some deconditioning, especially with having your sun in Aries. You might be like, how would I do this? How would I do this? But that restless energy, learn to know the difference between, is it Cancer restlessness or the Aries restlessness? In Cancer, you might feel it more in your stomach. Aries might be more like up here, and it can be like your physical body. You might feel more heat. You know, with Cancer, when you're trying to force through it, you might actually feel a little bit more constricted and you want to do it, but like you can't, kind of thing. You might feel almost emotionally dumpy. So get into that space where you feel motivated to do it, when you feel safe, and then do it. And as far as like, how would you approach handling many different interests and projects at once? Pick the thing that inspires you. Info dump everything. I don't know where your Mercury is, but info dump everything. And then pick the thing that most inspires you and start with that. Drop it when you lose interest and do the next thing. The other thing I would say is, I don't know the rest of your planets, but if you're starting things, then in your 11th house, you have Taurus, which is that maintaining energy and stuff. So working with like friends, online collaborators, internet, an online community. These are going to be some things that can help you to stay started. Were you gonna say something?
Yes, I was gonna say that I have her planets.
Oh,
And
great.
she has Uranus conjunct the midheaven in Aquarius. So just I thought you might find that quite interesting.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So it's in our 8th house. So yeah, like you're also going to experience a lot of like reversals and stuff. So you're going to like want to do something and then be like, fuck this, I don't want to do it anymore, kind of thing. So her midheaven is in the 8th house?
In Placidus it's in 9th, so yeah, it would be the 8th then.
Okay, yeah. So interesting. Where was she born?
Where or when?
Where? Location?
In Germany.
Okay. All right. Okay, we're not going to focus on that right now. But Uranus conjuncting her midheaven. So this is actually really interesting, because like, so Placidus is the unequal house system that reveals more of the psychology of who you are, and the whole house tends to be how things manifest more. So we tend to resonate more with Placidus if you live within the geographical range. Depending on where you live in the world, it can split up the sky in an unreliable way. This is less of the case being born in Germany, but this is really to say that like your midheaven has this chaotic energy that's very independent, and it's about separation. So the thing is, Uranus, it's not a bad planet and it's in rulership, but the thing is, it'll destroy and explode what isn't meant to serve you. So this is really to say that, like, you know, if you want to do something and like, I mean, if you kind of stop on it, there's a puppy. I wanted to say hi. So this is to say that, like, Uranus will destroy the things that no longer serve you, and you'll experience reversal. So if you have like a client-based job, for example, your client's money is in your 8th house. And so you might experience reversals with business collaborators, finances, resources, maybe things related to the internet. Things might just kind of like change. And with having Uranus here, you may just kind of have a desire to want to change things up. Or what tends to happen is, when we have Uranus in our chart, when we really pay attention, when you are channeling the energy of Uranus, you start to realize where things are going to fall apart, because Aries is ruled by Saturn and Uranus, and in ancient astrology it was also ruled by Rahu, because Uranus they didn't know of its existence. I mean, there's some indicators that they did, but they attributed the eclectic, independent oriented energy of Aquarius with Rahu. So what I like to do is I blend the energy of all 3 of those rulers. I see it as like, Aquarius is a fixed sign, and in like your case, you have it in your fixed 8th house as well, but it's in the house of reversal. And Aquarius is also really like about reversal as well. And so Saturn ruling Uranus is like, it's consistent, it's more maintaining, it's stabilizing and stuff like that. But it evolves from the energy of Capricorn, which can be a little bit gatekeepery. It keeps the power with the elite, and then you go into the energy of Aquarius, and then the energy is more, you distribute it more fairly to the internet and stuff like that. So your source of money can also come from putting yourself online and stuff like that. And when you're doing the things that's actually best for you, then there's going to be consistency. Oh, Uranus is actually in Pisces. Okay, it's 1 degree, so it's an out of house conjunction. Okay, got it. All right. Wow. Okay, that actually changes the energy of what I said. I hope someone who's watching this has Uranus and Aquarius, and I went on this whole rant. Wow, Uranus and Pisces. Wow, really? Okay. It's in the 1st house. So the 1st degree is also an energy that's consistent, like that. It's one of the Aries degrees as well. So wait, her moon and her Uranus is in Pisces, right?
And Venus as well.
And Venus. Okay. You know, actually, I'm going to. Once the Uranus showed up, there's someone in the lead. Okay, I need to actually write this down. Okay, so okay, so the 9th house, there's Uranus, Moon, and Venus. Sun in 10th house Aries, Mercury?
Aries as well.
Aries. What degrees are the Sun and Mercury in?
Sun's at 10 degrees of Aries and Mercury is 19 degrees.
Okay. I'm like, maybe I don't need to do that. I know, I'm like, hey, I'm doing a little too much now. But this is what was your original question? Yeah, like, how do I handle all of this energy? Sorry, I'm just gonna recap. Picking the things that you feel most inspired by as a Cancer, essentially, and then taking an indirect approach, and then put yourself in the public eye, essentially, and maybe do some collaborations in your local neighborhood. Mercury is about neighbors and stuff. This could also be picking things that are related with teaching as well. Definitely things related to spirituality, traveling, coaching, higher education. This is really to say like you can do anything, but the those things that I mentioned are going to be best suited for your chart. So if you're trying to kind of prioritize things, definitely do that. I would also say maybe like go swimming somewhere if you can, or go hiking and go physically higher up to like a waterfall, because I'm basically combining the energy of everything. Pisces is water. The ninth house is a physically higher plane. It's also, I would say, starting off with picking personal goals that feel good for you emotionally, for your physical body, that resonate with your values and stuff. Starting there, and then when you feel aligned both from your Cancer space, from your moon in Pisces, and really like realizing like this is the thing that I want to do, put yourself in the spotlight, then collaborate. Things of that energy. You're going to have to be the one to get started. You should probably be the one to speak up about these things. Writing could be a thing. Virgo rules your 3rd house and your 12th house. So something where it's like your online community as well as people in faraway places. You did mention like, you know, a lot of energy means a lot of ambitious projects, but maybe not to maintain it over time. So for you, you have the earth signs in the houses of other people. So you have Virgo in your 3rd house of people that you speak to day to day, your local community, your neighbors, your siblings and stuff. You have Capricorn in your 7th house of business collaborators, and you have Taurus in your 11th house of your online community. So right off the bat, I'd say find people in your local community, neighbors, people that are reliable and are able to give you, that are Virgo in nature, that are able to give you actual advice and support that leads to measurable results, that provide you with constructive feedback where you actually see improvements. It's not like this esoteric energy like Reiki where it might feel good, but you can't really, it's intangible. Like you want something that's actually going to help you. Pick business partners and clients that are Capricorn in nature. These are people who are going to be successful, that have established reputation, experience, older, and stuff like that. These are going to be people that are going to be ideal for you, like really delegating the maintaining stuff to other people. And then once you get started, going to build an online community of people that are loyal to you, that are Taurus in nature, they're very maintaining, they have the ability to see value. And they're ruled by Venus, and that's your 9th house. So coaching, things that resonate with your personal goals, spirituality, seeing things from a higher perspective, higher education. And these are going to be things that you can utilize to really help you. Your 11th house is also about your benefactors as well. I don't really know what kind of projects that you're interested in, but these are some ways that you can kind of take a look at it as far as like when it comes to maintaining, it's good to delegate to other people. I hope that that answers. Are there any questions that you think I should probably include? Or answers, I mean?
Not that I can think of. I think you've really covered a lot of things. So maybe just like a summary of what you advise for this season, I guess, like in a few sentences or even in a few words.
Aries season. I would say exploring right now, exploring ways where you can be more independent, assertive. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention the different, where you have Aries, like what houses you have in, what's the best way to use that energy. So if you have Aries in the angular houses, the 1st, 4th, 7th, or 10th, I feel like I kind of covered that with the question that I answered for the 10th house and your house for the 7th house. But if you have Aries in your 1st house, this is about what are some actions that you've been wanting to take. Start taking those actions. Not necessarily during like Mercury and Venus in retrograde, but sometimes I think it is. I personally created a video saying I encourage you to actually kind of fuck around and find out, because Mercury is about redoing things and Aries is about starting new things. So I encourage people like to actually start new things during this retrograde, but to look at how your pre-shadow was. If it was a shit show, don't start anything new. But if it was good, then it's like, okay, work with that energy a little bit more. I would say get back into exercise and doing it in a way that feels good for you. Working on your health and stuff, because you have Mercury there. Aries in your 4th house, I would say, where can you be more of a leader? What can you do to feel more confident showing up, speaking up, maybe exercising or working from home, doing something where you can just kind of like, maybe like a project that you've been wanting to work on for a while that you haven't done. Maybe you have the energy to actually start purging everything, things of that nature. And so the angular houses, they have the most energy. The succeeded houses are the houses afterwards. So they're the 2nd house, 5th house, 8th house, and 11th house. This is the energy where it's maintained. So if you have Aries here, this is where whatever you're doing in that Aries energy can stick a little bit more. So you actually want to be mindful about what you get started here, because it may be difficult for you to get out of it. So if you have Aries in your 2nd house, I would say look at your finances. What are some ways that you can get more what are ways you can be more independent and innovate your finances? If you are sharing finances with like a partner or something, you have Libra in your 8th house, look at ways that you can be a little bit more independent, a little bit more unique and innovative. What are some angers that you have, and what sacred information is it offering you? What kind of things, like, what are some things that, how can exercise support you? Things of that nature. If you have Aries in your 5th house, this is about like pleasure, dating, get back into like projects and hobbies that you enjoy. This is a great time to kind of reinvent yourself. Like this spring season is always the time where it's like, think about what do you want to bloom? And Aries is going to be when you feel the most courageous and the most inspired to do this. If it's exercise, if it's something active, if it's joining a startup community, this is something that would be really great to do. Maybe like you haven't dated in a while and you're like, you know what, I'm gonna put myself out there. Maybe you want to celebrate being single. If you have Aries in your 8th house, you're a Virgo rising, I would say this is a really good time to sort of process your trauma. And I would say go back to think about the things that I mentioned about if you're having issues with maybe people who are experiencing anger, or if you're experiencing anger, I would recommend looking at those things. One of the things that I've noticed is that sometimes people with moon in Aries or Aries in the 8th house will get upset, and they kind of sometimes will struggle to see a perspective outside of their own, because Aries came from Pisces, where everything was interconnected. And this is why when people say, oh, Aries is selfish, they're not trying to be. It's just that they came from a place where there was no separation. So it's a little bit difficult for them to kind of switch gears there. And if you're unable to see a perspective outside of your own, this is a good time to kind of explore what that looks like. You might feel more inspired to process your traumas in a way, I would say, using physical exercise, body somatics, bioenergetics, trauma release exercises. Shaking every day is a great way to release traumas. And the last succeeded house is Aries in the 11th house. So here, these are, I believe, Gemini risings, and you could have friends that are very Aries in nature. And it's also your 11th house of financial gains in your online community. So a way to increase your financial gains is looking at, like, how can you innovate? How can you be creative? You know, I mentioned that Aries are entrepreneurs, but if you have a traditional job, for example, and you want to get a pay raise, this might be the time to like bring it up or something and talk about new things that you've innovated. If you want to increase things, be bold, be daring, do things that are different, that generate wealth, so that you can go to your boss and be like, hey, I want to get I want to make I want to request a raise. Here are the things that I've done in order to really deserve this, in order to make this happen, essentially. And prove yourself, assert yourself. Maybe collaborate with other friends and stuff that are also very Aries in nature as well. These are some things that you can take a look at. And also looking to friends. Like with all these things that I've said, if the subjects don't resonate with you, you could still go to like those people, that area of your life. And the cadent houses are the remaining houses. These are known as falling in power, so there's not as much energy and strength. So if you have Aries here, you like, if you're judging yourself because you don't have as much energy as other Aries, it's not because there's anything wrong with you. It's not because you're inadequate. It actually means that you're in astrological flow with your energy. So you want to be patient with yourself. You're not actually supposed to overdo it when you have these sorts of placements. So the cadent houses are the 3rd house, 6th house, 9th house, and the 12th house. And what's great about the cadent houses is that if you do have like if you have like invisible planets, or like, you know, depending on whether you're born during the day or nighttime and your planets aren't necessarily doing that well, or you have some challenging aspects, they're not going to manifest as strongly. The opportunity to express itself will be limited. So if you have Aries in your 3rd house, the energy of self-made wealth resides in Aries. So this can be doing something physical, fitness, security, military, being an entrepreneur, being a leader in your local community. These are going to be some ways. Using communication as a way to communicate, or as a way to make self-made wealth. Writing and stuff in a very direct sort of a way can help you. Having Aries in your 6th house, these are Scorpio risings. And these are people where in your ideal work environment, you have freedom and independence to do things your own way. Again, being an entrepreneur is ideal, but it's not necessarily essential. If you have a lot of planets in your 5th house, or personal planets or strong planets in your 5th house, this could be an indicator that being an entrepreneur is ideal. But this is the time to also reflect on your health. Do you have any inflammatory issues, migraines, blood issues? What are some changes that you can make? Are you experiencing problems with angers? How can you resolve those things, essentially? How can you incorporate being more physically active in your day-to-day activity, in your scheduling? In your 9th house, having Aries here, that makes you a Leo rising. This is where maybe traveling, reflecting on what your personal goals are. I think spring is a great time. I think once a season actually is a great time. But look, considering what your goals are, but this isn't like Capricorn season. You don't need to be super structured. Just maybe go somewhere high up in a mountain, exercise, and really think about what activity you want to do, and maybe record yourself. Following your instincts. And this can be a great way to kind of use that energy, or even traveling during this time. And then having Aries in your 12th house, this is where it might be easier for you to connect with like your vulnerability. Your energy is more hidden here and it's invisible. But this can be a time where you can explore what are your fears, and connecting with that emotional aspect of Aries that I haven't heard people really address, that I think is really important, because having Aries here makes you more vulnerable. And when it comes to, if you're being an entrepreneur or being assertive and stuff, really using more of the energy of let go, let God, and surrendering is going to be more beneficial. So even though people see Aries as like, speak up, go for it, do your shit, whatever it is, when you have it in your 12th house, it's less about directing that energy, and it's more about just allowing the energy to go where it is, and that's where you're going to get the most support. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think you've covered so many things, and I think for the people that are going to watch this, they're going to find it very helpful and very interesting. And I will also put all the links up on the Instagram, and so people can find you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much again.
Of course. Thank you everyone for joining, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.